you very much. You hear me? It's okay with the sound because we had some problems to keep it here. I will try to dress a sort of panorama, but I don't want to spend 3 hours speaking to you. So I made a selection of items. And for the items I will not speak about, perhaps after you will ask me questions. For the one I forgot, I suppose some people will ask the questions because they told me if I don't speak about that and that and that, they will ask me. So please do it, don't worry with that. And sometimes I will just perhaps give some broad explanations because I think perhaps everybody knows Paris, but I'm not sure that everybody knows Paris here. So we're going to start. First to say what is APUR, because it's a special thing, so I just want to tell you about what seat I'm speaking. That's true that the president of APUR is Bertrand Delanoë, the mayor of Paris, and but the administration the board is not all the city of Paris. The board is a part of the city of Paris, but a part of state, a part of the region, and a part of other people, all involved in what are the main items to make a city going on. And the money is coming from privacy, so it's sort of mixed situation. We're not acting for the rules for the city of a building permit, we're acting to making maps and databases and analysis proposals. And how we organize town planning in Paris, we have 3 levels. That's important also to understand. We have the state level, that France, that gives some main rules. As for example, we have 20% of obligation of social housing in all the housing we have in the city. And the regional level, we have a sort of big maps. You have them on internet everywhere, but they are not, you can't refer to the map if you want to do something. You refer it, but it's not law. It's just indication. But regional level has in charge mobility and education starting from secondary school. And on the city level, you have, as you have in Vancouver, I suppose, local rules and education and so on, but local rules. And some numbers just to understand Paris. Paris is 105 square kilometers. It has 20,000 persons living on each kilometer. It has 28 square kilometers of green space, including 2 woods. It has many employments and many tourists by year. And as you see, the region is much more bigger, but with not so many people inside. And the metropolis dense zone, and I speak about that because, as you will see, we are now on a very big fight about the political evolutions of the territory of Paris. As you have here, Great Vancouver, you have the discussion with Great Paris. And this is special because the metropolis dense zone is 20% of the people, 20% of the territory and 88% of the people living there. But what you have to understand, for example, the region is 1,301 mayors. Is what I call boroughs. Sometimes I make some mistakes. It's several cities. And for Paris Métropole now, or included in Paris Métropole, that is a syndicate, it's 202 different boroughs, so 202 mayors. Paris has 1 mayor, but a small city just connected to Paris has also her mayor. And the urban decision, or each mayor taking his decision and giving his building permit. So, we spoke about 50 years. So one of the principal events, and it was, I didn't know Vancouver had some special events in that same period about your highways. We had the one for Les Halles, because it was the period when we destroyed Les Halles. So the positive is what it was a very important underground development on a very large scale. The bad thing was that we had a very big loss for heritage. And it started a big fight at this moment. And at this moment, we decided to stop the highway in the city. And we had an express highway that had to come along the riverbank. So we did it on the right side, but not on the left side. If you go to Paris, there's only a small part of this part on the left side that was done. And the part that is close to the Notre Dame, the view I showed in the beginning, wasn't done. This is important because now we are closing from the car the left bank, the small part, and I will finish my presentation showing what we are doing on the left, and because it's happening now, it will open in May. Also, in the same period, we decided to stop with destruction of Paris, and we decided to stop with the towers. And when I say we, it was not me, of course. It was the two people. The first one was Giscard d'Estaing. In 72, there was no mayor in Paris. The first mayor in Paris was elected in 77, and it was Jacques Chirac. And in 72, it's Giscard d'Estaing, that was the president, that decided to stop the towers. Giscard d'Estaing loved Beaufort very much. And so they decided to stop that. They finished only what was engaged, that with the Front Seine and some towers in the 13e arrondissement de Paris. And the same period, that's very important also to understand, Centre Beaubourg won. So it was just in between. So some details. Georges Pompidou chose the Centre Beaubourg. He died. Giscard d'Estaing came and said, I stop with modernity. Centre Beaubourg, this was the original model. It's very funny. And it was known by Richard Rogers and Renzo Piano, that were at this time 28 and 31 years old. This is because I think you have a problem with architecture here, and especially with getting young architects involved in your city. Another thing to understand, Paris is made of approximately 100,000 buildings, but more of them were built before the 50s. This is important to understand the shape of the city, and as you have to understand that they're old, but they're also plenty of new buildings, because the streets of all those buildings are very old, and some buildings are quite young. And you have that sort of shape we have in the city. So you see Avenue de l'Opéra, and you see things we have on what we call the Red Belt, that is social housing. And you have what we call the Faubourg. This is Haussmann, this is Red Belt, this is the Faubourg. The Faubourg is, you know, those typology you have that went on our own, without nobody taking care for them, that people like to live in, but in the 70s we decided to destroy that, to make the towers. And so these are the things that were made during the 70s. So what started in the 75 that was very new, that town planning agency, the APUR, started the work to understand Paris. So they made a very long study to connect landscape and architecture rules, because we were preparing the first basis rule of 77. So you had a very tough work made by François Loyer, paid by the APUR, just to analyze in a very precise term how was the city made with. And if you look at what was made during the Haussmann period, those red parts are corresponding to the Haussmann structure of Paris. But if you look at this map, that means also that all Paris is not Haussmann. A part of it, but not all of it. And what we decided to do also in the same period, we started what is a part of really the fundamental way of looking at city from the APUR, is that to interconnect what is social and what is urban landscape. That means people, economics, way of life, and also the shape of the city. And to have special grids trying to give the lecture of all that. And all this job made the rules of 77, and those rules were given a great part to what is the shape of the city, because each color is a specific rule. So you could imagine Paris is only 75 square kilometers if you take the woods out, so it's very small, and you could imagine all the rules. And what is white? This is a special place, very highly protected places, the 7e arrondissement and Le Marais, and the other white places here are modern situation, and this was the factory for Citroën. We were making the cars here on Citroën Park. On the same time, we had the new director schematic for all the region. I think there is no sound now. Yes? That's okay? Okay. And just to tell, this was not a law, as I say, but just a sort of description. It was just saying that you had a dense part and some small new cities around, nothing more. What you have to understand is that in the 50s and 60s, they decided to have the RER, so the Great Metro Line, going into the suburbs, and the construction of 5 new cities and La Défense. And since that period, nothing else happened in that part. So what we had in Paris after that period, we decided in 77 these new rules. Inside the main rules, we had small territories where we were working, as you are working here on special land part project. So it's quite the same. We call that ZAC. We had Zone d'Aménagement Concerté, a special zone for concerted planning. Concerted with people, but mainly with developers. But on some of them we had very, very special rules, as you can see there. And on this, so you see we have all sorts of shapes, meaning that we were doing as if it was old city. Meaning that you have to understand that in 74 we had the petroleum crisis, and people started to think about big cities because there was no money to do that. So architects, they always need to have strategy. So they say now it's retour à la ville, come back to the city. So we find new shapes with small buildings. And those things are like old shapes, but with design and built with new models. And there we had a fight that was very funny around Les Halles, because we had the drawing of Ricardo Bofill, and you know the work of Ricardo Bofill, I won't make a comment on that. And you had the proposal of Jacques Chirac with columns and with the forum, as you know, he was built after, that we just destroyed it last year. At the same moment, started a very big fight from the architects, and Jean Nouvel was the one that initiated this fight. And we had a very intense competition coming from the whole world, with 600 projects proposed, saying you don't have to do that at Les Halles, you have to do something clever. And it was a very, very big, it was the first time all the architects were involved in one item, saying our profession has ideas, and you have to listen to us, we have good ideas. And on the same period, you have Christian de Porzampart that made this small building here, and this, what we call La Rue des Hautes Formes, was the first time we tried to do new buildings in the situation of the 70s, in terms of, we had a mixed and modern shapes, as you can say, and also buildings where you could have a sort of human scale, of domestic architecture. And this was very famous for that, because it was the first time we had that sort of tricky way of doing things. 801, the election of François Mitterrand, first president of the Republic, on changing the politics. It was a left-hand politics. And he decided to have a politics of a great project for Paris. And all those projects were made in 8 years, because all was finished before the 90s. So you have the series, you have the Musée d'Orsay, you have the Institute of the Arabian World, you have La Cité des Sciences, you have the Great Louvre, you have the Zénith, you have Ministère des Finances, l'Arche de la Défense, and l'Opéra Bastille. All those buildings were made in different ways. The Pyramid of the Louvre, he decided that it would be in Minpei. For l'Arche de la Défense and the Opéra Bastille, it was worldwide competition, open, with a jury, so you had 300 entrances each time, and the jury chose 3, and the president chose 1. But that's correct. You can't say that's not correct, because everybody could enter the competition, and everybody thought for the Opéra Bastille that it was going to be Richard Mayer. It wasn't Richard Mayer. That's a true story. And for the IMA, the competition was only for young architects. At this time, young architects were Roland Castro, Jean Nouvel, and things like that. And Jean Nouvel and Archi Studio won. They were 30 years old, or 35 years old. 33, I don't know, something like that. So, at the same time, Jacques Chirac was the mayor of Paris. So that, I tell this because urban strategy are linked to economics and to politics. They're not alone, you know. Or the what, there are small pieces of land, you can do it on your own, but what is making the city in a big scale, I think it's really intimately connected to politics and to economics. So Jacques Chirac decided to do a plan showing what was going in Paris. He wasn't making big projects, but he was making things. So he decided just to put together all sorts of actions that were going on the east of Paris, that was the poorest part of Paris, with many problems of low income, of people with big problems, etc., etc. And so you see, this is Paris Rive Gauche, you have Bercy, you have all the canal project, and you have La Villette and the Parc de la Villette. The competition of the Parc de la Villette was also in '83, won by Bernard Chenu. So we are in '83. At the same time, we have 3 gardens, and I will speak about the gardens after. What was happening there, that people wanted to have, how to say, precise rules, even for the project that were not directly in the main rules of the 77, because when we had special zone, you were allowed to do something else. And they said that, we want to have rules. And so we have an architect, this is Jean-Pierre Buffet and the Front Park of Bercy, that made those special design to organize the buildings. And this was famous because it was quite specific in there and in around the great library, because as you know, François Mitterrand decided to make the big library, and the APUR proposed to cover all the railway all around that space to make Paris Rive Gauche. At one moment, somebody said we could put the railway station to the peripheric, and but it wasn't decided like that. The SNCF didn't want to change. You know, in Paris it's very difficult because SNCF belongs to the state, for example, the Voie Express, the lines, the streets along the River Seine are not belonging to the city. When it's for cars, it's free. When you do Paris-Plage, you have to pay. It's a way of doing things. It's like that. So APUR proposed those streets, and after, you had the competition for Paris Rive Gauche with several architects acting on different plots, and that's when arrived Christian de Porzampart that made something he called the city of the third age. That was meaning that he was accepting streets, very narrow streets. This was a revolution because the uses in terms of urban strategy in that period was to have not so narrow streets. You know, okay, we have no highways, but we need streets for cars. So it was a sort of discussion like that. And he made streets of 10 meters. And he said that the buildings were along the street, but taking light from one piece to another. That means that the rule for building was not on each side of the street you're allowed to do 10 meters or 12 meters high. You're allowed to have a game. So you can go higher if in front you have a home. And he made a sort of tricky game like that. We have an inner course. The streets and the grid for building are quite straight. So a building goes from one side of the street to the other one, as you have your lanes here. The lots are coming from the main street to the backyard street, but it's one lot. This was very famous because he started to invent a strategy, a theory, but also the method. So to do the things, they decide to have a sort of workshop, and everybody was working together on a model, on the same model, and he was a sort of operator, chief operator on that. We have, I said, at the same period, you have to understand the 80s were a period where the architecture was in a special quality, as we can say, as your library here, the big one. It's similar, but they have many ideas, and all the architects really took part of the life of the city, of the political position. It was very active. And we had 3 parks in the same period in Paris. The Parc Citroën, that was this one, with half of the park is quite classical, organized, drawn, and the other half of the park is with nature. It was the idea to have a sort of normal nature in city. It was made by Gilles Clément on this part. We had the Parc de Bercy as an historical park from heritage, drawn with preserving the old trees, preserving some of the railway inscriptions, and so on. And in the same period, we have the Parc de la Villette And Parc de la Villette, I won't show him, I think you know it, it's a really conceptual park. So that was funny to see that in the same time you had three strategies to do three parks in the same city. And that was really, I think, the expression of the 80s. What we did also at the end of the 80s, you have to understand that during this period, when you had strategies, around the maps for Paris, it was white. And when the region were doing joins, inside Paris, it was white. This in terms of cooperation. So, the city of Paris and the APUR, this was the role of the APUR, saying we have to draw things. But as you can see, the limits of the drawing, the color, is the periphery. Is the administrative limit of Paris. Sometimes it goes outside because the city has a part of territory outside the periphery, like we have here with the APUR, the place for helicopters. But, okay, but it was first step. Second step was about public space. Everybody in the world started to think about public space, in Paris also, and it's the period where we made les Champs-Élysées. As you know them today, for those that you know Paris, the Champs-Élysées, you had cars everywhere on the back side of the Champs-Élysées, and we put the car underground and have public space on facade to facade, but also Avenue d'Italie and Richard Lenoir. And in fact, all this job on the public space was a little bit problematic, because the idea was, has each space his own identity, or do we not need a guide for the whole city? So the city decided to produce a guide for the whole city. You have to understand that Haussmann, when he made the extension of Paris in the 1860, the first thing he did was to connect public space to have the same streets everywhere. So the city was smaller than the limits, and he made the streets, and on the streets he had the vocabulary everywhere the same. To say identity is to have the same public space everywhere. That's why we have that in Paris up to today. But the question of the identity of the public space is still a basic question in Paris, and also now in the surroundings. For example, until that period, here today, when I speak, you're not a part of the things you have in a public space, you're not allowed to put them outside Paris. The design belongs to the city of Paris. So it's a discussion. Also, we had not only big operations, we had also small operations refurbishing small parts of Paris. I say that the urban strategy is not to leave any pieces of the city on the backyard. So you have the big ones that everybody knows, and where you can have developers because it's iconic and it's visible and they can make money, etc. But you have also refurbishing all parts of the city, being very, very attentive just to keep a sort of spirit of the city and the identity. And all those parts were the ones that should be, had to be destroyed. So it's very insane buildings. And until we repaired the more than 1,000 insane buildings in the last 10 years. And it's not finished, but it's a good step. So other events in that period, it's we have from 83 to 89, we have an engagement on the suburb we called Banlieue 89, that was initiated by François Mitterrand. It was the first time that the politics said in a public way that we had a problem with the suburbs and we had to try to integrate Paris and the surrounding of Paris, and we had to integrate the suburbs to the whole dynamic of cities. This was the first thing. In the same period, some architects called 75021. In Paris you have 20 districts, 1 to 20, so they were the 21. They made a call for a metropole named Paris. It was the first time. So people started to say, we're going to have a problem with these limits and this diversity. And in the year 2000, a very important event also, it's a law, national law, we say Solidarité Renouvellement Urbain, giving this obligation of 20% of social housing in each city. And if you don't do that, you have to pay taxes. In Neuilly, we have 1%. But Neuilly is very, very rich, and she pays. Now the new government say, we want 25%, and the taxes are going to be very, very high. So we try to make that people do it, really. In 2001, election of Bertrand Delanoë as new mayor of Paris, and this you have a view of the metropole as it is today. And what he decided to, with his team, a political strategy, meaning that open city is a growing city. Open city, in my word, is a city that accepts anybody. So it's a social city. It's a city not for the rich or for the poor, it's just a city to have the society in all her aspects. And this is going to be the good target so that Paris increases. It's not evident when you are in a city like Vancouver, for example, to think like that, but that the good target is to be open city. 3 topics that are normal topics, not very original. It's sustainability, equity, and metropolitan scale. Some key elements for the urban strategies, because they gave us the key elements. It was to implement Parisians' quality of life, okay, with using landscape preservation. Landscape preservation means also how to use the heritage of tomorrow, more public space, new mobility, sustainable engagement, but also promote Paris' attractivity for employment, for research and for culture, more equity, and integrating all the actors. That means participation, but also opening the relations with the surroundings, to start with the metropolis. So, very quickly, the election in France are in March. So he decided 2 months later the election to have the first thing showing he was changing things in the city, so we started to give place for buses. So it was a little bit caricatural, but we put some bamboos, Rue de Rivoli. They died in 2 months because it was summer, but it was done and everybody was laughing, but it was done. And doing that, after we started on other spaces, but we started very quickly with this in 2001, and with also increasing the presence of nature in town. Because as you know, Paris is very dense, so we have a very big problem to giving nature to everybody. You have that in your city and you do it very nicely, and all the cities I think do it now in the same way. But also we started with a new strategy with the new rules. To have I showed you the rule from '77. It was getting a little bit old, so we had to have a new rule, and the name has changed. It was not ground occupancy, but we call it Plan Local d'Urbanisme, local plan for town planning. And this local plan for town planning, the big change was integrated in a plan for urban and sustainable development, what we call PADD. The PADD level is a sort of theoretical level, giving the main ambitions. And after we have a rule level that's a little bit different. And when you see at this PADD, you have several strategies you have to, so I need my glasses because it's too small for me. So this is a landscape, shared public space. We had maps to show centrality and local life. This is made by foot. People are working and they just look where are things, etc. More green space. Social integration, and as you see, the title is something very special. It's to reinforce the right you have to live in Paris and your obligation to have urban renewal, economic development, and transform the quality of life with equipments. This is very ambitious. And in details you have it. Okay, you have the geography, the country, the landscape, the diversity. But also you can see that now we can starting to appear transformation. That means that heritage is not only to preservation but also to create. Second step, very important, is that the map now changed completely and the surroundings are integrated into the map. And say that to engage the urban renewal of the crown of Paris is just to connect all the projects inside but also outside the peripheric. And you had more than 70 projects that were going on, but nobody knew all those projects were going on together. Just to do those maps was very, very new. On the same hand, we started also to make urban renewal on the cities of the 70s, not to leave anybody on the side, so we have, you know, those cities. And I don't know if you have the same thing in Vancouver, but the main problem in those cities is not to have the idea for the urban renewal, it's just to solve the property of the ground. Because the ground, For example, here for the Olympiad, we have a railway station, after we have storage, after we have streets, after we have parking lots, after we have equipment, and at the end we have a sort of structure that acts like a public space. So it's very, very difficult to work on those spaces because of the work we have to know who belongs to who, what belongs to who, sorry. Again, on this crown, so we just were to see in detail, this is not the project, but tendencies. So we started to study, this is what the job of the APUR I'm now the director of, how are they, those communities? How are those districts? What do we know of those people? How do they behave? I don't know, as if it were very different from the Parisians. And at the end, we had a first document for the new rules, and as you can consider, if you have in memory the document of the 77, it was all urban shape. This is a political document. Say we have 4 zones, although the zones are not so important, but we have 2 highly protected sectors, that's always the same, the centers, the 7e and the Marais. And on the zones, what you have is this blue grid, and this blue with dots. This is that when you build something in this blue grid, you're allowed to build more if it's offices. And when you build things on this part, you're allowed to build more if it's housing. Because we studied and we saw there was a big problem of equity on the both sides. And after we made more detailed things, with the pink one, you're obliged, if you build housing, to have 20%, 25% of the superficie dedicated to social housing. As soon as you build for 1,000 square meters, so very low. And this was, so at the beginning it was a little bit difficult, but now it goes well, really well. And what is red is the line we have for protecting commerce. Because as you know, in Paris, we have many commerce on around the streets. It is very important, so we propose to have a special rule for that. And this wasn't, at the beginning, wasn't accepted at the government level. And now it has changed, it has been integrated so that everybody in France can use that sort of rules. And everybody does it for social housing and for commerce. So after we started to do things to keep buildings out of insane situation. And an example, this is a building, perhaps some of you knew that building, it was very iconic because it is Rue Saint-Antoine and before the Rue de Rivoli. And we had that possibility to extend the building using the small space on the side of the wall. So we made a competition with, I'm sorry, it was a young architect, but also we have older one at work, don't worry. And the one, and Shigeru Ban made the competition, so he was not young. Sorry, he lost because he made something really impossible. But the one that won, we made that building now, this is in the Marais. So it's in the white part, very highly protected zone of Paris. And these are more classical refurbishing, and as you can see, we can put also solar panel, etc. This is a way to do things in Paris. Another way is the transformation of this building. This is a building of 50s. You have the same in Berlin, that is a historical monument, but it is like that. In Paris, we made a transformation in the 80s as a strawberry building. It wasn't very good, but it was to have energy, efficiency. It was the first step of energy efficiency, and now it's like that. We extended the floors. It's APUR that made the project, those architects, and they proposed something that wasn't possible entering the Parisian rules, because you're not allowed to build up to above 37 meters, and this building is going up to 50 meters. So you were allowed to do the floors up to 37, and after you were not allowed to do anything. So we changed the rule, especially for this building. So they extended the floor, they kept the facade inside, but they put it all in glass, and outside they make a facade with a special material, so that the air can enter and the people don't have to pay very high rent, and so everybody stayed in the building. And now it's a very famous one. The entire world counts and films this building because it's the reality of things you see in the books. We want to do that and that and that, but it was made. And we're proud it was in Paris. And this is an example of social housing. It's just in front of the Opéra Bastille. So just to show it, this was a very big fight because it's quite contemporary building, and it was a little bit difficult to make it accepted, not by the people but by the politics. Sometimes it's not easy. And just to say that in that sort of way, we added in 10 years 32,000 flats in Paris. To do the social housing targets, we bought also existing buildings. So housing somewhere in Paris, it's 2.3 million flats, and I said that, but the target is to have, we had since 2001, we made 482 new social housing units, but a part of them were bought as existing buildings and a part of them were built. It's okay? Because it's not finished. Okay, I go on, I try to be quick. Other target as yours, climate. So for the climate, we made a huge job. We use thermography. We made a photo with the plane, so that you have that sort of thing. We call this the cadastre solaire. In 2 months, people will have on the internet the possibility to click. And when I do that, oh, those are my possibilities. But we made also, to have the results, oh, that are my possibilities, we made 600 facades and 600 documents on specific buildings, and we organized them in several typologies, and for each typology we proposed a key book of what is going to be good for your building. So what's the better thing to do, the less expensive, and the better win. And that's our green, and after, as much as you go red, it means that if you do that, it's not very good for energy efficiency, but it's very expensive. Means that all the old buildings, the 3 first ones, it's not very useful to have, for example, a protection in the facade. You have to change your heating system, you have to change the glass, you have to isolate the roof, perhaps you have to do things on the courtyard. But on the street facade, normally it's not interesting, and the street facades are very interesting in terms of architecture, so the deal has to be done in that way. After, for the brick buildings, it's very difficult, because those buildings are very thin buildings. The brick is 14 square centimeters. So it's a very hard, this is a very big problem, and it's not resolved today. And after the 70s, 60s, it's okay, and the problem is the 80s. The building of the 80s, nobody knows how to refurbish them. I don't know if you have the solution, but for us it's a very big problem. I can tell you that for offices, they destroy the buildings. It's better to have a new one. They refurbish the 60s, but they destroy the 80s. That's not. So climate ambition is like yours, so I won't speak about that. We have exactly the same ambition. Today it's about 250 kilowatts by square meter by year, medium for buildings in Paris. This is the medium target, and so the target, it's for existing building, it's 80, and sometimes we go up to 30. For the building of the 60s and 70s, it's quite easy to go to 30, and it's quite easy to go for quite all of them to 100. So we think it's possible to do that, but it's a very, very big challenge. Other items is green space. You know that in Paris it's tiny spaces. For you it's funny, you have big parks and huge spaces everywhere, mountains, and we can go to the beach, and we have really nothing. The only thing we have in Paris is the city. The richest of Paris is Paris herself. She has no mountains, no seaside, so it's a mess. So having got 60 hectares of new green space is a fight. It's very expensive, and it's a fight. So we have new gardens. We have also gardens we share, like you have here in Vancouver, I saw that. But we try also to transform public space. This is the Place de la République. It's a major public space. The cars were going all around, as you could imagine, and now the cars are going just on one side, and we have a very huge public space here. And this is opening in 4 months. And we have also other spaces. We try to allow the people just to be in the space, and I think Wi-Fi also helps for that. But it's important that we have to go on with new users in the public space. Since 10 years now, people in Paris, they learn to be in the public space. They can have parties. They can just eat a sandwich and sit on the side of the street. Before it was impossible. Nobody did that. You know, 15 years ago in Paris, you were not allowed to just go on the grass in the gardens. It was just not allowed. But it's difficult because you have many people. So if you open a grass zone, in 1 year she's killed. So we open one and we close another one. Okay, we do what. But as you see, people now, they sit and they go everywhere. This is the Canal Saint-Martin. So I think in 3 years maximum, I think the cars will be kept out of this space, at least during the whole week, and now it's only on Sunday, but I think it's very normal. What we do also, because when we have no space, we need to have ideas. This is to open the city for the night for contemporary art. So this is Nuit Blanche, and people, it's open all night. Now it's an idea that started in Paris and went away in the world. Many cities do that. It's free, and you have access to several spaces. The bars can be open also all night. It's very funny, and you have more than 1 million people walking everywhere in the streets. It's a huge feast. It's very funny. And we have Paris Plage. You spoke about the beach. Paris Plage means that we close the edge of the river each Sunday, and in summer we just have there a special place so that people can have feast, can swim, etc. Not swim in the swimming pool, not swimming in the Seine. But we have also classical way of doing things. This is for the town planners. We have 10% of the territory that is in project in Paris, a part of it interconnected with the surroundings. I will only show a few of them, not all of them, it's going to be too long. But the principal idea is to make city on the city. So you see we have it everywhere, small ones, big ones, and very big ones. Small ones like this one, this along the Seine River, this is Paris Rive Gauche. This building was a concrete building along the River Seine. You're not allowed to build along the River Seine. And this was intended to be a public park. And we had a discussion to say, but if you're not allowed to build, we will never have that sort of space after. And this building was the first concrete building of Paris. It is 100 years old. So we decided just to have a competition. It's private. We're making competition with the private people since 2001. And now they do it without us because they find it's much more intelligent for them. It gives them much more quality for the project because they think about what is the building before, and they think it inside them, inside their teams, and at this moment it gives better quality for the program. So architecture can help also economic development. And so this was a private one, it's made by Jacob McFarlane. Now it's finished. This building is a building where we have a school, restaurants, bars, exhibition place, and shops. We do also schools, so it's not new schools, it's 28 new and refurbished schools. But this is architectural competition. It's, you have an obligation with public money to have competition with architects. What we said in Paris, you have to involve 5 teams, 1 young team, 1 foreigner, and 3 you choose what you want. And we also have iconic architecture, because this is very important for us. So this is the Philharmonie, and I will show the 2 others. So this is the Triangle Tower. This is a private development. This was not a competition. They came with that offer, and after a discussion, the city said, okay, we can try that. It's not still done, but they started to think about it in 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So perhaps now it's going to be. We're not sure, but by the way, first it was in the other hand where they changed, we discussed it with Jacques Herzog and Pierre de Meuron. The other one is Les Halles. So Les Halles, we had first a competition for a big urban plan that was won by the very classical solution. So it was too classical, so we decided to have a new competition for architecture. And this one for the part here, this is what we call la canopée des Halles. And so, as you saw, we started by Les Halles, and now this is starting to be built, and it will open, I hope, in 2015. It's a very, very difficult project because, as you have to understand, Les Halles, we have 800,000 people each day coming in this station, and 100,000 getting out. So, and this hasn't to be closed. And the commercial center that is the most profitable commercial center of Europe. So you can understand it's very, very difficult, but at this moment it's going on well. Also lots of projects. This is an urban renewal also. This is an old building and now it's refurbished. We have places for students. This is offices, and on the roof of that we have solar panels. It makes a very big superficie of solar panels for Europe. This is very classical. This was the place for the Olympic village. We didn't got the Olympic, as you know, but we kept the place for the village. So we have here a brick part. We have there the tower that was Renzo Piano. And now we are working on that part, and it's very difficult because how can you imagine the shape of that? You have offices along the railway and housing on the park. Everything is very dense, quite high, more than 50, up to 50 meters for part of them. So we decided to have a workshop, including the developers that they pay very, very expensive just to be in a workshop and to build things. And they were accepted with an offer for the price and for what is your what is your target? What are your values? Values. What are your values for this territory? What are you going to give to the city if the city gives you the right to build there? Money, okay, but it's not enough. What are you going to give? So they made some discussion with that. It was quite interesting, and we choose together teams of architects. So now we have a sort of workshop with a very big model, and working 5 developers and 12 architects. One made a tower in Toronto, is Ma, the Chinese guy, made a tower called Marilyn, and the other foreigner is Aires Mateus from Portugal. Those are the buildings we are doing. Those ones are the one in Batignolles, you see. This one is just close to Batignolles. I didn't speak about that. This building is an existing building of 600 meters long that was able to support a new charge. So we decided to build on the roof of the building. So a part of it are equipments, a part of it is offices, and a part of it it's 1,000 flats. So it's a huge development. And Remkoulas won the idea, and now we have 12 architects working all together, also in a workshop. We like workshops. We have rules, 50 kilos, but we have also workshops. So those are the buildings that are just finished, those 2 ones in Batignolles. We also have on Paris-Rive-Gauche a new university. I think Paris is the only city in Western Europe offering new university in the center of the town. It means that Paris gives the territory free and the state builds a university. And just there for university also, we have heritage, old building and new building. This is Frédéric Borel. But what we do also, going east, we're not going west, but we're going on all around, but going east, first starting a discussion to have higher building. It started there at this point. And you can be proud because it's Ivanhoe Cambridge that won the first tower you're going to build there, with Jean Nouvel as an architect. That's true. It's Canadian money. And to just be able to have this east development, we made a workshop during 1 year with several architects on several spots in Paris to see what could be towers in Paris. And they had discussions with everybody. This was public. We had debates. So that going steps by step, seeing what's possible, what's not possible. It will never be possible normally. We will always have a vote in the city council. But we can have discussions. That was the idea. Okay, we have other actions. We are making also developments and also other actions, you know, and I will go quite quickly. Public space and mobility. More than half of the Parisians don't have car. And now, since 10 years, the reduction of cars is going really down. That means that we are less car in Paris, doing less kilometers. But what we do, we have, this is streetcar networks in Région Île-de-France. Why do I show you that? Because you are the one in Paris, but what we're working on, this is what we do with the tramway, streetcar, but what we made something, And this is also my team, so we have a funny way of doing town planning perhaps for you. This is to try to see if it's possible to use those lines to make freight, to serve the city with logistic. And we made it during the day and with a false trunk, a real one but empty with nobody inside. It was profitable. So now this year we made a development with real private partners, and we hope that in 2014 we can start with the first experimentation in June. For cycles, we have cycle lines like you have, but we have also this sustainable Velib that you know. And that's paid by the publicity. You pay, but very low, and the first half hour is free. And this was very interesting because it's the first time we had something that was not only inside Paris, but also outside Paris. And to choose all that spots, as you can see, we made sort of precise maps. We have all the inclination of all the streets in Paris and the surroundings. Because it's very important when you're in a bicycle to see if it's flat or going up. Another idea was sustainability with Autolib. I don't know if you knew Autolib. It's the same as Velib, but it's electric cars. And they're also something quite interesting. It's the first time we try to have things going outside Paris. So this shows you each perimeter is a city, with a mayor and city council, etc. So all the ones that are green, they accept to be partners in Autolib. Autolib is private development, not public one. Velib also. It's paid by Mr. Decaux Velib and Bolloré for Autolib. And so now we try to involve the white and the red one also in Autolib so that to have a correct grid. And we work also about water supply. Paris, perhaps you don't know that, has a grid for non-potable water and a grid for potable water. And 20 years ago, they decided to stop the grid for non-potable water, to sell those places and to have big urban development. Big. For Paris it's big, for you it's very small. And we started to work, they asked us to try to help the city to have a decision on that item. And we said, you have to keep it. First, it's nice, but it's useful and we have to preserve future. And I can explain you why. Because, I'm sorry, I don't know if you see the documents because on my computer it's very nice, but here we have, the red lines are the visitable things outside Paris and we have plenty inside Paris. Visitable means that you can go down and visit. It's not small tubes, it's tubes where you can walk in. And that means that everybody that goes down there, it's not for water, it's for your phone, your iPhone and your TV. So if we don't have water going in those lines, the place where the people will go for TV will be in same place. So we need to have water in it. So that's the sanitary action first. And secondly, perhaps it's a possibility to have correct development. You see the red factories. For a long time, everybody said Paris put away all her services. Those are for water, and now the capacity of that permits to offer water outside Paris. So all those things are now things we're starting on, saying that urban services are the main part for sustainability for cities. And we have to take care of that. And also because having water in the city, you have that, but we don't have so much. It's very important for us. So this is with non-potable water, and perhaps we hope we could have them swim in those places that are in the wood. In 2008, we had new elections. And Anne Hidalgo started to be first deputy in charge of city planning. And we had 4 landmarks, as can say that, but in the same time, they had the creation of Paris Métropole, as I told you, and also the international consultation for Great Paris that was initiated by Nicolas Sarkozy. What I mean, in the same time, we had international consultation for the Great Paris. It was 10 teams with architects and people from university. Just they had money and they were free to think what they want about the city and the future of the metropole. And they were very inventive to just change the line about what's town planning. Now we are just starting with a sort of workshop, Atelier du Grand Paris, where we have new team involved, and we hope they can be good advisor or good, how do you say, just people with ideas, and we can take or not. That's very interesting. So for us, it was a new political sequence. And the perimeter was different, and we had to think about new tools, perhaps new targets, and perhaps new strategies also. That means that usual town planning is still something that the people do, they do it on the city level, on the small pieces. But the need is, how do you manage to interconnect all those things, and how do you manage to give information and equity to the information to all those people? This is the territory, so it's a big mess. Paris is the small one. Paris is city and department. When what you have in blue is what we call the dense agglomeration I was speaking at the beginning, you know? And this is the region. So 80% of the region is with cows and cattle and fields and woods, and the blue part is with people. And now this is the structure. So it's very difficult because you have all sorts of structure everywhere there, and some communities try to organize to not small cities, but to have 5, 6, 7 cities together. And now those 6, 5, 7 cities together, they try to have a sort of strategic development together. So this is a very, very big change in Ile-de-France. This hasn't been since the 50s. We had one change was Haussmann. The second one was Delouvrier making the new cities and La Défense and the RER. And now perhaps we're going to have a new step, because instead of having very small cities involved for urban strategy, we will have a sort of cities of 400,000, 500,000 people with an enormous scale as Paris or biggest, and all those big packs perhaps can start and work together. This is, I showed you a strategic plan, you know, in the 76. This is the one we are going to have in 2012. It's like the first one, it's just giving a sort of idea of city shape, and it's very difficult to interpret that, to see what it's going to be. This is more efficient. This is going to be the new grid for the new metro. We have a very big discussion of that. This was the proposal to have a new metro line, but nobody wants to pay. So that's a small problem. And the discussion we have two discussions. Discussion one is, first, please help what is existing situation. We have bad trains and bad RER, so please help us with that. Second thing was, why do you put it underground? Why don't you put it above? I think you have that sort of discussion also. Architects, they want to put it above because they say we need to see the city we are in. It's very important. The technical, they want to put it down. First, they like to have it, you know, like, you know, Sarkozy said, I have 10 machines coming with me, and we're starting the future. So, by the way, not this moment, perhaps in 5 years, but for the moment, no. And so, at this moment, nobody knows what's going to happen. And the second reason why they want it to be underground is because they don't have to negotiate with everybody, just for the railway station. That's the main problem. Because all this territory, and that's I'm going to show you, is all built, but in a special way. So for that, perhaps you know Paris, but this is far from you, it's Great Paris. Paris is just 1 kilometer from that place. It's that place. You see, the peripheric, the TGV, the tower of Ivanovo is going to be there, and we were on the Chinese part here. So the problem now we have to discuss with that sort of territory. So it's not very easy, as you can imagine. What are we going to do? We have that sort of shape also. And this. So we have towers like you and small houses. It's not exactly the same, but perhaps. And this. You see, we have high buildings and very, very terrific housing here. So we decided that the first step to do, and we did that during the last 3 years, was to give information, exact information on those territories. That means that it's not correct if you could have very good information on a city like Paris because you consider it's an heritage city, and no information at all on the suburbs, and you consider that's only your project that gives quality. That's not true. The cities have quality, different, like us. We're different. And I think it's not equity, it's not a good starting point just to decide that in part you have all the information and you have to take care of everything, even of what has no value. And on the other hand, it's only what you're going to go on with that's going to have value. So we started in the APUR to provide the information, all sorts of information. You can go on the website, you have maps and maps and maps, perhaps 200 maps of all sorts. But this is the population density, this is how the rich people, the poor people, and how it's going on, the people. This is for offices, how it's going on. For example, if you see on this map, the green spots that are completely outside the map, it's the place of Marne-la-Vallée. And Marne-la-Vallée today tells you that they are in big growth, developing so much that you have to take care of the millions of square meters they are doing because all the cars have to take the highway, so you can't change the shape of the highway. In fact, as you look at things, Marne-la-Vallée is just getting down. So it's a big problem. The problem is to help them perhaps not to go down, but you don't have to listen to what they're... Because they want to have great projects and say they're making big developments, but in reality, they're not selling 1 square meter a year. Also information on commerce, very important, I spoke about that. And we had made what we call a database on project. That means this is active document. When you click on one spot, you see what's going to be there, in what period, and what are the actors. And we made this all around Paris, and going down to Orly and up to Roissy, just to interconnect things, but in a very, very precise way, because we need, it's not, you're not doing perimeters, you're just making things like, you're making sewing, you're sewing the cities together. It's not something where it's nothing and something where it's something, it's just sewing them all together. For example, if you look in detail, this is what we call centrality map activities, and all those are where we repair exactly what's there and why this is active territory. This is made by foot, it's not made by plane. And we have this information on the whole grid, and not all the dense zone is larger, but the basic 4 departments. And this is very important because it changes the value of the territories. And for example, when you put the new railway station that are the red spots, and you look at this territory, for example, in terms of streets, you think that in some spots you have no streets. So if you have no streets, how are you going to go to the station? It's a question. So that means that you have to think about public space. And to think about public space is very difficult because it means that you take private territory to give it to public territory. But at the end, what you can see is that if you look at how is organized the percentage of street space and the density, more the street space is up, more the density is high. Because it's in Paris, we have 25% of the territory is dedicated to streets. And it's the highest density. That means that if you want density, you need streets. And this is a discussion we start to have with the cities all around Paris, just to the people understand that. That's made that if you are doing streets, here you're very lucky because you have the grid. We don't have the grid. You saw those streets, it's something incredible. But it's just a mess. So it's a very big problem. And that's the problem of the suburbs. The main problem of the suburbs around Paris, that we don't have place just to put streets and to have buildings along the streets. Just enough. Sometimes we have grids, but it's very, very few. So it was important just to do those maps and to give them to all the citizens and to give them to all the mayors. This map, for example, also, the first time it was made, it's a map showing all the urban services. And all the urban services are located where we want to make urban development. That means that today, if a developer comes, he says, you put me away the central for heating, and you put me the thing for water, and you put me everything away, because now we make a development. So how do we do a sustainable city if we take all the production for urban services outside? It is very difficult. And dense cities need to have common services. In the family housing you have, in the small density you have, it's very easy perhaps to find a way to be sustainable on your own. I think in the future, house will be on your own. It's possible. But in our density, it's not possible. So we have to just show that. So the idea at this moment wasn't to say you have to do that, but just look at the situation. Be careful of that, be aware of that. And the same for green belt and blue shape. So I just want to show you some tricky example, and it's quite finished. This is, Paris is just there, and this is Plaine Commune. So this is now you have the Stade de France. If you went there, you never saw that. But you have the Stade de France, and it's like that. Not everywhere, but a part of it. So first step is exactly to explain them what's happening in their territory. One thing we propose them is to say, but it's not so far. Look, it's just not comfortable, but it's not far. Be careful with that. Because they have a sort of, you know, the mayor say, oh, but it's not possible. So one thing we propose is just to have a good lecture of your territory. And to add this lecture, we have what we call sensitive maps. That means that we pay people so that they speak with the inhabitants, and we have a lecture of the territory. That's not the lecture of the professional, but the lecture of the people living there. And we put all that in a big bag or a big basket, and we tell the mayors, first look at all that, and after we can speak about urban strategy. So knowledge. Something else is also, I took the example of culture. It's the interconnection between formal and informal. We discovered by working that we had some phenomena very special in some part of Paris and the suburb, and we didn't understand why. And this is about lecture. Lecture is not easy for culture. And here we have libraries, bookshops, and also very big, cultural events of all sorts about lecture. So we just looked what has happening there, and we discovered that all those people, they decided to work together. So we have artists, poets that have helped to live in some places, and they can read in the bookshops, and they can also read in the library, and the library help the bookshops, etc., etc. And this makes a system, and we ask them, what do you need from us? Say, we need a website where you can show all our events, and we need to have indications on the public space to show where we are. That's not very expensive. So for me now, it's 2 items I wanted to show you, and it's finished. So 5 minutes, please. I hope it's not too long. Yes, it's too long. I'm sorry. Okay, I got 2 items. First is, could you imagine your city without children? And the second one is the River Seine, because I think I'm obliged to show you the River Seine. So just in Paris, we made plenty of things for children, and it's still a mess to be with children in Paris. So we try to understand why. And this is really town planning strategy. It's really urban strategy. So we have many families in Paris now, but we didn't give more space for them. I mean, the housing for families is still the same percentage than 10 years ago. So it's critic. The family, they don't find place to rent the flats. And the families are working very much. The 2 parents are working in the families in Paris. I mean, they need a high level of services. And after we have poor children and all that sort of stuff. So we made, these are classical documents, and we made also sensitive maps to see how are the children in the city states. The youngest one, but also the one that are between 12 and perhaps 20, 15 to 25, because they need special attitude, and we need to permit them to be in the public space, for example. Also, we have association that helps children outside, and we open the space more and more, and Wi-Fi access, but also in Paris, we used to tell everybody what he has to do in each space. So we decided that we need spaces where it's free. We have partnership, you have that also, you have that sort of partnership also, you have urban sports. This is urban sports you design, but we have also urban sports, the people try to do by themselves, and we have to keep them. We just have to find them out. That's a discussion also we have with the services. Places for children. The idea is perhaps children could go to school without their parents. That's in Paris is not very easy. This is, you have traditional fees, but also possibilities just for you to have your friends and to be in the street and to have some discussions with your friend. That could be acceptable, There's a problem of noise. This is our beach. It's only during 1 month in summer, so it's not, but we have sand on both sides. But the idea of that is that you have also to offer holidays in the city for the children. The ones that don't go away, they need to have holiday places, so you have to offer that for children. And you add also to integrate children of what is the city of future. You have to ask them what do they want, what do they like. And we have juries for schools where the children are involved. They don't choose the school. They just say what they think about what you show them. We are not saying that people are going to choose everything, no. But you can have discussions with them, and after the politics choose. That's their job. And this was just to say that for me it's impossible, but it's a real challenge, because in the center of Paris we have big problems with that, with the families and children, and we want it to be the main target for the next years. So the River Seine, this is history. We have history. You see, Paris wasn't like the Eiffel Tower. You know, it was international exhibition we had on the River Seine. It was very funny. So the River Seine is many projects in all the region Île-de-France, all sorts of them, and also in Paris we have so we are just going to close the red part, but it's the only part where we have cars going on the bank. The rest is on the top of the bank, but we have also ideas for swimming pool and for also refurbishing a port. We have 14 ports in Paris, so I mean we have logistic, very heavy logistic. For the buildings, for example, the things come by boat and go away by boat. So we decided to do something in the center, so on the right bank and on the left bank. On the right bank, it's 12 kilometers. You didn't have a fire light from the periphery to the periphery, so it was a highway in the city. We just proposed to have 6 fire lights. It's not very much. And the police was very happy with that, because with this you can regulate a little bit the circulation. On the left bank, we just proposed to kick the car out. It's a big fight. And the new president said yes, the president said no, because the space is not belonging to the city. So you can decide to kick the cars out, but you're not in charge of the space. So I'm just going to show you what we did. So it was like that, and now it's like that. It's done. But we kept the limits of the garden, because everything on their side is Patrimoine Mondial de l'UNESCO, highly protected situation. You need to have the okay for everybody. It's a very big mess. But, okay, this is along the quay, so we made also the firelight, and now we are going to have boats on the river, and we kept the 2 lines for cars, but we did them a little bit tiny, so that we can add place for the people to walk along the river. And this was a small house, nobody knew what it was, so now it's going to be a bar. The bar is... But it's going to be like that. If you come, I think next summer, and this we have a bar at this moment, but it's not a definitive one, it's a small one, but you can eat oysters there now. And on Sunday you have no car, so it's very nice. And you have sun quite late here. On the left bank it was more hard, because the left bank is first a big space, and it has not many sun, because we're not on the good side. And we had very big discussions with all the Parisians. We had more than 24 public meetings everywhere, speaking, and the people, they said they wanted space with nothing. They wanted to do sports, they wanted to have boats, they wanted to have nature but not gardens, and they wanted to have culture but not too much, and they wanted to have economics. So we made all that, and after we had the discussion, so how do we do? We do an international competition with architects. We do nothing. If we do nothing, it will be nothing. We just change the space for cars, and we put, a nice space as if it was a garden. Now, we proposed something, and the politics accepted, so we were quite happy at this moment. Perhaps in May, when it will be open, it will be a disaster, but for the moment it's okay. We decided that we have, I forgot one thing, we have to put everything away in 24 hours because of the flood. So this is a little bit difficult. So we decided just to keep everything and to add some elements. So we added first island with gardens, and we think that perhaps young landscapers could have a place for 1 month or 2 months and can try to imagine what they want, and after they go away, if it's nice we keep it, if it's ugly we put it away. No, that's very easy, we give them some money and young teams, they can provide a place for 1 month and they're just to animate and do things like that. This is a way to do, in terms of town planning, we have a problem. Town planning is very long and the rhythm of people is very short. So we need to have ideas, what can we do quickly? And this is the idea for quickly. I think MUF is coming in January or February to speak, and they are doing exactly this in London. It's really incredible the job they do. And it's not expensive. This is another spot, and we want it to be like that. So we have sports, and we will have small, tiny houses where you can rent to do a birthday feast with your children, or you can work, or you can go on with friends. In Paris we need space, so we need to have space so that the people can go in, and it rains also, not only like in Vancouver. So this is what the idea. And the last document is the iconic view. This is how it is, and we propose that. And we need to have a boat with a screen there at night and with cinema. And now we have the right to do that. In that belt, it is really historical place. So for doing that, we're going to destroy 3 trees just to enter the thing, but we have new trees just above. And this has to be destroyed not destroyed, but put away in 24 hours. So we have an engineer architect that found the solution, so we are quite happy with that. The only thing we won't have is to have the things going into the river. They don't want the people to go into the river, so we stop this. And I finished. I'm sorry.